What is up, Inside Black and Gold crew? Steve Geller, Jeff Nowak coming to you with the latest edition. We're going to be talking about breakfast with Kellen Moore, Saints safety that joined us on Sports Talk, and some NFL rule changes. Today's episode, getting into all that. Jeff, how you doing, man? Getting closer and closer to the NFL draft.
Yeah, today's episode brought to you by Short Sound Bites, because that's what I'm going to start calling Kellen Moore, Mr. Short Bite.
Radio friendly.
Yeah, it's radio friendly. It's true. Like, no clips over 30 seconds. There'll be a lot of them, and you're not going to learn a whole lot in any of them. That's what we've learned about Kellen Moore, and that's what's going to continue. But yeah, so the owners' meetings are going on right now out in, and I'm doing good, by the way. I know you asked. I just forgot to answer. We'll get to the Final Four this weekend. You know,
you're so locked in on the Saints.
You know, Steve is trying to get me to call him Chalk Steve forever, and this was the year for Chalk. I saw a funny meme that was like, the Paul Skeens meme with Livy Dunn, and it was like, every guy with his wife who told him that she was picking all 1 seeds to the Final Four. Like, wow, what a genius! Because it happened anyway, and so that's me with you, Chalk Steve over there in the Final Four. I thought I was bold picking 3 1 seeds into 2. Apparently, I was dumb.
I'm just hoping to come out ahead with Duke on top at the end and celebrate with all the big winnings.
Yeah, all like $40. So you're gonna anyway. So
big bucks,
big bucks. Anyway, so yeah, the owners' meetings are going on right now down in was it Florida? I lost track. They're in Florida.
Yeah, they're in Florida.
Right? Yeah, a good excuse to go down to Florida for the week. Mickey Loomis isn't there, but Kellen Moore is. Kai Harley, a bunch of those other guys are down there, and owners' meetings. There's not a ton that goes on. It's really just an excuse to talk to the head coach and then weigh in on whether the tush push should be banned. It will be eventually. Like, it's going to happen. And I have a good rant on that whole subject. We can get into it later on. But it's only a matter of time once we move past the injury part of it into it's just a shitty play that no one wants to watch. Like, that's when we will ultimately ban it. You need 24 votes to ban it. We'll see if we get there this year. If not, it's going to happen over the course of time. Anyway. So this segment, we're going to get into what Kellen Moore did say. Talked for about 30 minutes to reporters on hand. We'll get into a lot of that. Like you mentioned, we have an interview with Justin Reid. We'll play in the second segment. We had him on Sports Talk. He's a fun guy to talk to, right? Like, he's very friendly. He's got a lot of personality. He likes to play chess, which I feel like Juwan Johnson is the guy who would like to play chess. I feel like at the end of this year, we're going to hear about Justin Reid and Juwan Johnson playing chess on an airplane at some point. Like, I think it's only a matter of time. But think of someone who I don't think probably plays a lot of chess. It's Kellen Moore. But this is what he had to say about the offseason as a whole. Let's just get into it. We're just going to run through a lot of these clips.
Yeah. I feel like you've done a nice job of adding real value to our team, and obviously it's the beginning process of the whole offseason where you're continuing to try and acquire guys throughout this whole process, and so I feel like we're heading in the right direction.
You got some additions, but there's also been a lot of retention, bringing guys back, everything. Was that kind of your understanding of how things would go when you were talking about the job, taking the job, all that, or is that?
Certainly, when you go through free agency, players have a choice, and I think that's an important aspect of free agency is they have a choice as well, and so we feel really excited that a number of guys really had a high desire to come back to New Orleans and be part of the team, be part of the community. And so it was really cool to get to know those guys in a short period of time as they've gone through their process as well.
This is 6:45 a.m. local, by the way, that this is going on in Florida.
Is that true?
6:45 a.m. Yeah.
Why
so 7:45 Eastern. It used to be a thing where they were doing breakfast, but I heard one of the things this year was there was no breakfast being served for folks. So I was like, uh-oh.
They just all showed up like super early. Yeah, no, it was weird. I woke up and you were like, oh, you had already sent in the clip. I was like, wait, they did that? What? Yeah, anyway, it's a whole thing. But, one thing that Kellen was talking about there is I think is a fair point, which is like, yeah, we can make it all about like, wow, they're just bringing back all the same guys. And sure, there's an element of that, like Chase Young, Juwan Johnson, Ike Adam even, like, but I do think that there's something to be said for, why do these guys want to come back? It's a different coach. It's a different system. It's a different offense, a different defense. But a lot of these guys wanted to stay. And I hear all the time about like, oh, people don't like it here. People want to leave. This so-and-so, oh, he wants to be traded. He wants to be everywhere else. Well, then why do these guys keep coming back? Right? So like Juwan had options. You know,
Right.
like he could have gone somewhere else. They sold him on a vision for this offense, and he bought that, right? No, I think people say, oh, they overpaid. Like, I guarantee you, if they did not overpay, he would have gone and signed basically the same deal somewhere else, right? Like, he would have probably gone to the Broncos and signed, if not what Evan Engram signed, something pretty close to what he signed here. So now I do think that's interesting. And, you know, you want people who want to be in your building. I think that's
Right.
You know, people talk all the time about like trades. Like, go trade for this guy. If he's going to be miserable here, he's not going to be the best version of himself. So, you know,
It would have been funny, Denver, though, if he could hang out with Adam Troutman and Lucas Kroll.
Yeah, hang out with the guys who, you know, didn't get the job over here. Like, he would just displace them again. I'm sure Adam would have loved that. But no, and just kind of going on that, this is what Kellen had to say about Juwan Johnson specifically in terms of expectations.
Yeah, obviously, you know, we're really, really excited to team up with him again. I think that was one of those ones that we talked about, like free agencies, they have a choice. And so we were really excited that he chose us to come back, to be back in the city of New Orleans. You know, that's a huge aspect to us. And so he's been a really good player in this league. We're excited with where he can go. Certainly his ability with the ball in his hands is critical. It's very valuable. His ability to play in the second and third level, a little deeper passing game concepts with the tight ends. Not all the guys can stretch the field that much vertically, and we feel like he can. And so, you know, I think some of the stuff we've done in the past with these tight ends that we've had in some other stops, we feel like we can add to his game.
Yeah, and I think that's important. Like, and this is why when I talk about Juwan Johnson's deal, I always kind of push it to, like, it's not about what he has done over the last 3 years and how he has been used. It's a lot more about how he is going to be used over the next 3 years and what your vision is for him in this offense, right? 66 targets. If that number is a lot higher, then suddenly that 3 years, $10 million figure does not seem nearly as crazy, right? And it does sound like Kellen is excited for what he can do in this offense. Not necessarily like, oh, everything he's been asked to do is perfect. Like, no, there's stuff that he can do that he has not been asked to do. And I look at Dallas Goedert and how the Eagles use Dallas Goedert, and that's how I expect the Saints to use Juwan Johnson a lot more this year. And that's kind of how it sounds. Like, you're going to take advantage of him down the field. He's going to be more of a primary option on a lot of plays.
Yeah, I just want to see more of that. You know, the red zone threat, I think, you know, can be utilized a whole lot more. There were just too many times throughout Juwan's career for me, he seems to just disappear in the offense, and I just didn't understand the lack of consistency of getting him the ball. Hopefully in Kellen Moore's, you know, scheme, he can get the best out of him.
Yeah, and I think that's
consistently, at least. We've seen flashes.
Right. Finding ways to get him involved and not just kind of allowing it to be part of the offense, I think, has to be a goal this year. And you didn't bring in, you know, like, you could have made a bigger splash in a lot of ways in free agency. You know, you could have gone and got Cooper Kupp and suddenly, okay, we have to build things around Cooper Kupp. You didn't do that. You brought in Brandin Cooks as a guy who I think kind of fills a role in the offense, isn't someone you have to design things around. But let's kind of move on to okay, this is what he said about Chris Olave in the offense, because Chris Olave is a guy who I feel like every 2 days I see another edit of like, oh, trade him to this. So look, here's what he would look like on the Bills, and let's the Steelers who's the Bears or the Texans even, but because of CJ Stroud. And anyway,
Patriots too. I saw that one.
Obviously, the player from our perspective, Chris is a phenomenal player. Phenomenal player, has had a huge impact on this team. He's going to have a huge impact from a medical side. On my side of it's just education and understanding the circumstances he is in. Obviously, we feel very comfortable with Chris, understanding he's been through a lot the last year or two, and so we feel like there's a plan in place to continue to let him progress, and certainly I get the feeling that he's really, really excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, and that's a good example of like, oh, look, he said a lot of words there, and like I don't know, like it is what it is. I don't think Chris is getting traded.
Talented guys, dealt with concussion issues. We're thinking we can get the best out of him this year.
Yeah, you just got to figure out a way to stop having him have so many concussions. And here's the thing, like, we'll talk a little more about Derek Carr. People are like, oh, Derek Carr. What about the concussions when Derek wasn't even on the field? At the end of the day, it's a guy who has had a documented history of concussions going all the way back to Ohio State,
right?
Being a question mark because you don't know how sustainable he is as an NFL player. And we'll see. Either way, you're not trading him because his value is never going to be lower than it is right now. Like, I'm not just trading a guy to get rid of him. You know, like I see people like, oh, Joe Milton. Yeah, like give me Joe Milton. Go to hell.
Cool. Throw him in with Spencer and Jake. Awesome.
Yeah, Joe Milton. I love when teams tried to trade their spare parts as if somehow other teams are like, oh my God, give me some Joe Milton in my life. Get the hell out of here. Like every team thinks like their third string quarterback is somehow a valuable asset to every other team.
Well, I mean, with Saints fans, I felt like they wanted to do a deal constantly and we're always packaging Andrus Pete somewhere.
Yeah, right. It's like if you don't want him, then that probably means no one else wants him either. That's what people never figure out. But no, Chris isn't getting traded. This is the offense. I think the offense you're looking at right now is basically what it's going to be, and we'll see what that is. Like this is not a situation that is built to change a lot. Like the pieces are there, maybe next year, but and that's why I think Derek Carr is going to be your quarterback. I think this is all going to kind of coalesce into that's the group we have: Brandin Cooks, Derek Carr, Chris Olave, Juwan Johnson, this offensive line, whatever pieces you add to it in the draft. Maybe you add another veteran down the line. Maybe there's another running back that you can plop into this equation. Maybe there's another wide receiver. Maybe there's a few other things you can do. But this is not going to be a Saints team that is super active in the trade market outside of finding ways to finagle certain players out of the draft. I just genuinely believe that. Like, it's a first-year head coach. You're going to want to see what this looks like before you add in some crazy variables to it that you don't understand. And that's why. So here's what Kellen had to say about the Derek Carr part of that situation.
Just your perspective on that, where your guys' relationship is with Derek, and does he want to be here?
Yeah, no. Derek is obviously a really good quarterback in this league. We've again, I think, been pretty consistent as we've gone through this process. With the restructure, as far as just giving ourselves some flexibility from a roster standpoint. Derek, I'm excited to have him back with us really shortly. Obviously, April 14th will start, and I think that's the fun part. These guys go through the offseason. They have a chance to spend time with their family, invest in all that, which is the right thing to do. And once you get back April 14th, you kind of begin the process of football's in the fold, and it'll be a great process.
Do you get the sense that he's bought in, though, excited about what?
Yeah, we're excited to team up.
I don't think they've talked a lot. That's kind of my takeaway there. I don't think there's been a lot of communication.
For me, it was just the April 14th twice. It's like ding, 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 OTAs, baby.
No, it's not OTAs.
No?
No.
What's April 14th then?
Teams can start their offseason workout programs in April. Now, the Saints can start theirs a little earlier because teams who hire a new head coach can start them as early as April 7th. The Saints are, I don't know if maybe they're starting them prior to April 14th, and April 14th is the day Kellen is hinging on, but that's the start of their offseason workout program. So that's when you can start actually get guys in the building, because
I thought OTAs were cranking up.
No, well, that's what I thought too. I was like, wait, no, that's way too early for that. Like, those are after the draft. Like, you have a rookie mini camp before you even get to OTAs. But so, like, if you remember, Tano Passanio got hurt last year, right? He got hurt during an offseason conditioning program. That's what this is. It's like, that's when you can start to get guys into the building. And having guys in the building means you can start having football conversations. You can't have like classroom work, as far as I understand, but there's a lot of rules that prohibit certain things during the offseason. So, and it's CBA rules to protect players from not having any time off, right? It's preventing teams from just constantly being like, yeah, I know the season ended last week, but I need you to be here so we can go over this and this and this. Like, no, this offseason is supposed to be downtime for the players. They'll trade on their own mostly. They'll get ready on their own and then they show up. But the off-season workout programs is kind of that's really that, like, we think of it as OTAs is the first step, right?
Yeah.
The off-season workout programs for a team is kind of their first step of building toward next season. So that's what April 14th is.
I'm all getting ready. I'm like, OTAs, baby. I'm ready to go to training to Saints camp.
No, we still got some time. But no, these guys will be in the building. A lot of them will be in the building. And it sounds like Derek will be part of that group. So, I think that's where
he better be.
I don't know if he's required to be in, if they ask him to be in, or if they say, hey, this is where we need you to do this. It's a whole, teams can operate on their own. But I get the impression that Kellen and Derek have not communicated a ton to this point. Now, I think that'll probably change once the offseason workouts start, but that's kind of where we're at. a lot of people are still talking about a trade. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. I just don't.
That was the worst April Fool's joke going around yesterday, because I think I saw Saints fans going, "It's the joke we wish were true," which hurt.
Yeah, no, I mean, people just hate that guy. Like I like the stuff people will say, and like it's beyond football. It's like I'm uncomfortable around a lot of it. Like it's like you guys are getting real personal over stuff that it's like not that serious. Like people say some buck wild stuff, and it's like yeah, you're trying to make that guy not want to be here. You're doing a pretty good job. It's like I see people talking about his family and stuff. Like,
oh wow,
like,
no, I haven't seen any nasty family.
Oh no, it's there. It's there. People say some crazy stuff, and
you talking like wife and kids, or like his brothers?
Oh no, his wife and kids. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Come on,
like,
man.
I want to make his kids cry and stuff like that. And it's like, if you're engaging with that type of content, and if you are putting that out into the universe, understand that is a you problem. That is a very much a you thing. Like, I can understand being mad about football and complaining about what this and that and the other thing, but it goes so far beyond that when it comes to Derek that it's like, take a step back and think about like what you're actually saying here, and that's where I'll leave it. But it's weird. It's weird.
I think that might be one of the negatives with social media, is the fact that something you might say to somebody in a bar joking around, you just put it out there on social now.
Yeah, it's like everyone's sitting in their car in traffic at all times. Because like that's kind of my thing. It's like you put a pane of glass in between you and another person, and suddenly you are willing to say the most ridiculous, heinous stuff that if you both had your windows rolled down, like you would never in a million years say it to that person. That's kind of where we are on social media. And the internet's a cesspool, and I get it, and I should avoid it entirely, but like the stuff people are willing to put out into the universe will never cease to blow my mind. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to Brandin Cooks, because I thought what Kellen had to say about Brandin Cooks was interesting. And here you go.
Yeah, I had never met Brandin. Our circles were very close. Him being a Northwest guy, playing at Oregon State, and then obviously going to Dallas at one point as well. Phenomenal leader, phenomenal player. I think that combination is very valuable for us. He can still run, he can still play. He had kind of an unfortunate season last year, just with the injuries and the setbacks with relation to that. So his targets and catches and stuff were down. If he plays a full season, they probably look a really heck of a lot different. And so we feel like he's still got the player in him, and the leader that he's going to be will be hugely valuable just for our entire team.
Is there a body type there that you guys would like, or can you get it done with three guys that are all kind of?
Yeah. There's flexibility within that. Obviously, hey, anybody in a perfect world wants to have a basketball team with some tall, some short, some quick, some big. We're flexible. And certainly the people part of it is really, really valuable to us, and we feel like we brought in an excellent player in person in Brandin.
How much was kind of adding more speed to that core also a part of that equation of bringing Brandin in?
Well, that's certainly what you're bringing when you bring Brandin in. We do feel like we have some size behind him. We have some speed still behind him, and some younger guys that we're excited to continue to develop. But, you're looking for certain people that fit your locker room who still can play at a really high level. We feel like we hit both of those with Brandin.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. You would assume that over the course of both these guys who have effectively been in the NFL for like 10 years, you would have had some overlap, right? Like a guy who played at Oregon State and a guy who played at Boise State, the same part of the country, they don't really know each other that well. Like both guys played for the Cowboys, Kellen coached for the Cowboys for several years, did not overlap. So it's kind of an interesting thing. And, I think it kind of came down to, okay, what do you need versus what do you want? And what you needed was a veteran receiver who still has some juice, has some speed. You probably wanted a bigger guy, and it just didn't work out. And this is kind of where you are.
The biggest thing for me, we've talked about, I think that my perception of Brandin Cooks was a me guy, and now hearing from the voice of the Cowboys, and even more now from Kellen Moore, of the type of leader he's going to be to guide a young group of wide receivers. And, you go through that group, someone I'm interested to see year two of above means, because his rookie year got cut short, and just, continuing to develop even guys like Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave, because I'm hoping, and I think the Saints are too, that Brandin Cooks is that alpha dog for the wide receiver room.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'd like him to be that. He's been in the league for a while now, and I think he probably has matured a lot since he was here. I feel like we saw that with Mark Ingram too. I feel like when Mark Ingram left, initially it was a different situation from when he came back and had been around the block a few times, and so we'll see. But I do think that Kellen kind of betrayed a little bit there of like, yeah, you do want a room that is a little more varied than what you have, right? Like, yeah. Bunch of 6-foot guys who are fast and probably a little injury prone. And you probably don't want to have taken hits, right? Like you don't have a guy who can, you'll say like, he's going to go over the middle of the field and make a tough catch in traffic. You don't have that guy. Like, no. You'll ask them to do that, but that's not what I would say. Like, okay, if you had to name like the top 3 skills of all of your wide receivers, what would they be? It definitely would not be in the top 3 of Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, or Brandin Cooks. Now Brandon has always been, I think he is a sneaky kind of thick build. So I think to some extent he is a better option than those other 2 guys in terms of a slot role, but it is what it is. And we'll find out. But I do think like, it's like, yeah, even Kellen will admit like you want a basketball lineup where you have like a big guy, you have a contested catch receiver who you can trust in situations. You don't have that with this group.
Like you mentioned to draft, undrafted free agents, and I really don't think what's left in the current pool of free agents is anything that's too appealing size wise.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah, I don't think there's a receiver out there that you're going to add. I mean, I think you're done adding anyone above minimum contracts.
Yeah,
unless somebody, like we talked about in the last episode, like an edge rusher possibility maybe after the draft if you don't get that guy in the draft, maybe. But right now, And there's a few other things. We don't have to play the clips. I do have one more clip I want to play, but so he talked about Talais Fuaga, who he said he views as a left tackle. Which I think answers a question. Trevor Penning sounds like he's still your right tackle.
Keeping him at right.
Dylan Radin sounds like he's going to compete for that left guard spot. I still think he's going to be your starting left guard. And that's that. I think that'll be your starting offensive line, barring any draft picks. And we'll see how that goes. But he also talked about some injuries. Foster Moreau is still working his way back. Taysom Hill's still working his way back. I don't think they're pressing anything. I think that's the reason you haven't done anything with Taysom Hill's contract right now, is because hey, we don't know exactly where he's going to be and when he's going to be ready. So to me, that's kind of the tripping point of like, once you have an idea of when he's going to be back on the field, you can start to talk about like what's reasonable in terms of that contract. Until you know that, it's kind of all over the place.
I love the fact too, when asked about, with the tight end position, and he just mentioned what basically, I'm not sure the exact terminology, the breath of fresh air kind of that Foster Moreau is when you get to talk to him.
Yeah, he's it's in some instances a guy tears his ACL in the last game of the season. You might think, oh, his roster spot's in jeopardy. I don't think that's true of a guy like Foster Moreau, because it's like he's a guy you want on the team. He's a leader. He's the type of guy who, if you're a new coach coming into that room, into that building and into that locker room, you want him there because he's going to help you.
Right, helps deliver your message because he is that team guy.
Yeah, he also Kellen also talked about Spencer Rattler. One of the interesting thing he said about Spencer Rattler, which is true, is it's like when you watch his tape and you try to evaluate where he is, you have to give it the context of so many people were hurt. It was such a difficult situation to go into. He's a rookie, and in every situation, a rookie by the end of his rookie season has been going basically 2 years nonstop, because you have your final college season, then you go straight into combine work and draft prep, then you get drafted, you go immediately to a rookie mini camp, then OTAs, then mini camp, then you get like a month off to catch your breath, kinda, as you're trying to learn whatever you need to learn in that short span. Then you go straight into training camp, and then it's go from there. By week 18, like again, you're basically at 2 years in without a break. So I think Kellen is correct in saying like, we're going to see. Like, I think you need to make a jump from year 1 to year 2 in his situation.
He mentioned that too,
justify where you are and whether a team should continue to try to develop you. And I think that's on him this year to show that he has done that. And I think it's reasonable to think like, hey, those 7 games, 6 games, 7 games, I can't remember how many, but like those games you started, yes, you lost all of them, and that's not a positive thing, but you have to be able to turn that into a positive thing of like, this is what I learned and this is what I'm better at and this is what I've worked on. And if you can do that, then I think you kind of go into this situation with fresh eyes and figure that out. Kellen did say that he wants to have a backup a set by the season. And he said kind of without saying like this whole like, ooh, they're competing during the season was always stupid. He didn't say that. I'm saying that, but it was like you need to make a decision. And stringing Jake and Spencer along last year was not the right way to do it. They should have just moved on from Jake because at the end of the day, it was very clear that Jake was not getting an even shake at that situation. It was just, we'll keep him around because why not? Right? He's under contract. And so I don't expect you'll do that again. Maybe if you draft a guy and you go into it that way, but I think if you draft a guy, it's kind of going to be the end for Spencer in that way.
I just think too, a massive opportunity for the young guns there with Spencer and Jake to have not just Kellen Moore, and we talked about how he's grown up, being that kid that was the son of a head coach, has played the position of quarterback at every level, and the staff he's assembled. We've got a bunch of quarterbacks also on the roster, so you got a lot of QB minds in that room, and you can only imagine that has to help develop a lot of this young talent.
I keep waiting for someone to ask if Kellen knows Jake or if he's met Jake, because like we mentioned, like his brother, his brother was the offensive coordinator at Boise or at Fresno State when Jake was there.
Exactly.
So I don't know if they even have they may have talked. Like I genuinely don't know. I'm curious. But one more thing we can get into. So Kellen was asked about scouting quarterbacks. He's been at several pro days with quarterbacks. It sounds like he is of the belief that you should be bringing in quarterbacks pretty much every year and developing them. He said, hey, this is a good quarterback class. Quinn Ewers is a guy who I think everyone's kind of fallen asleep on in terms of being a guy that you could bring in. But, I think he's suddenly kind of emerging as like, I don't see the Saints going quarterback in number 9. I really don't. We're in the point now where people who decided the Saints should draft a quarterback 3 months ago are now basically just trying to figure out how can that happen, which fine, be all in on Jackson Dart. I'm not. And I don't think the Saints are going to be either at the 9 spot.
Please not at number 9, then at least trade down to get him, for crying out loud.
See, I disagree with that. I think if you're going to go get a quarterback, you have to, if you do believe that a guy is worth taking in the first round, then you should take him at 9.
Well, I don't like Dart at 9.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Either you like him in the first round or you don't like him in the first round, right? Like the idea that it's a 3-pick variation. No, because if he is a first-round quarterback, then you should be willing to take him basically anywhere.
Nah, too many dudes definitely that I think should be higher on the draft board than Dart is. So I just don't see 9.
Right. Well, I agree. I just don't think if they trade down to 13, suddenly it's a good pick. If you're going after a first-round quarterback and you wouldn't take him at 9, but you'll take him at 13, then you shouldn't take him at all. That's my belief structure. And that
maybe down 19-20 range.
As the quarterback position is too important. If you think he's the dude, then the idea of that you're going to risk him by trading down 5 spots to get a little extra value means that you didn't believe in him in the first place. So that just doesn't make sense. Now, if you were like, hey, I think this guy is a day 2 prospect, and you're like, hey, I like a Quinn Ewers and I want to bring him in. Great. If Jackson Dart's there in the second round, you're like, okay, you know what? 40 sure. Let's do it.
Right.
But if it's like a 5-pick spread and you're like, let's gamble. No, that means that you weren't committed. That's how I feel about it. But people disagree. Anyway, let's move on. That's it. That's what Kellen Moore had to say. There wasn't a ton more than that. I mean, he said a lot more. It was a 30-minute interview, but it wasn't not a lot more worth talking about.
So Quinn Ewers, though, you mentioned they're visiting with him, or he's coming to visit actually. They went to go check out Kyle McCord.
Kyle McCord at Ohio State, right? No, that's Will. Syracuse. Kyle
he was
McCord.
at Ohio State, though.
They were at Ohio State, so they saw Will Rogers. Is that his name? The quarterback? Will Howard for Ohio State. So yeah, I mean, there's guys that they've looked at. There's guys that they will continue to look at. I think if you're looking at a quarterback, it's probably more day 2. Based on
they even went to go look at Cam Ward, and people are losing their minds that they're trading up to get him.
Yeah. I mean, that's still on the table. It's there. But all right, let's wrap this up. Let's come back. We're going to play our interview we did with Justin Reid, new Saints safety, also new dad, Justin Reid. He's got a what? So his baby was born right before the Super Bowl in January. So it's like a 4-month-old baby. So a good time to be moving across, just for states and closing on houses. So you had a lot of interesting stuff to say. So let's hit the break, come back, dive right into that. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do that. Hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can hit up Steve at Steve Geller WWL, and you can follow the show at Saints_pod. And as mentioned in the previous segment, we're going to be playing an interview that Steve and I did on WWL Radio, talking to new Saints safety and returning Louisiana resident Justin Reid, aspiring chess player and real estate agent, I guess.
And joining us from the golf course. That's why it sounds a bit windy.
And amateur golfer with occasional wind gusts, Justin Reid. Here you go.
Saints safety Justin Reid joining us here on WWL. Thanks so much for the time, Justin. How you been doing?
Oh, man, great. Just awesome. Appreciate you guys allowing me to come on board. Can't wait to talk to all of the Saints out there.
Definitely appreciate it, man. Me and my counterpart here, Jeff, were at your introductory press conference at the Saints facility, and just to feel that excitement from you about being back in Louisiana was really refreshing. Getting to soak in a little bit more. How are you and the family adjusting, knowing you're going to be back in the boot?
I think that I have a little bit of an easier transition than most guys. I already know the area so well, already have so much family there that the transition's pretty much streamlined. I already am closing on my residence in the next 3 days because I already knew exactly what areas to look at, and I'm just excited to get down there, get in the building, get in Coach Staley's system, and start getting to work.
Yeah, Justin, I know you had your first kid recently. Congratulations, by the way. How's dad life treating you?
I'm sure everyone who's a parent out there knows how those first couple of months are. Not sleeping very much, but it is so rewarding to see her, especially now she's starting to have a little bit more reactions and facial expressions, smiling a lot more. So that's just so rewarding to see that.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, has it settled in yet that, you're going to be back in front of family? Like, I know when we talked to you, a month or so ago, it was kind of fresh. You were just saying, hey, it took a couple days to settle in. Like, have you kind of had time to reflect on what it's going to mean walking into the Superdome for the first time with a Saints jersey on? Obviously, you've played there before. In terms of, hey, I play for the Saints now. This is where I am.
Yeah, thought about it a little bit, but I don't think that it'll really hit until we start getting closer to that first preseason game and regular season games where I actually get to see my name on the back of the jersey and walk out to that crowd and hear the chant and really just get to feel the electricity and the atmosphere. So really looking forward to it. Right now, it's just all about the work ethic mentality, being a dog in the weight room, being a dog in the film study. So that way, you can get guys to rally. We can all walk to the season extremely confident about what we're going to be able to go and do.
One thing about being back, though, Justin, I know you know the summers here well. Have you thought about Saints training camp?
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty familiar with it. I was already telling my girl, is like, hey, when you walk outside in the middle of July, and it's like, it doesn't matter. You can't hide from the sun, whether you're in the shade or not. It's going to be like you're wearing a fur coat out there. So salt tablets would be a must. Electrolytes would be a must. You just get right back into it and just, power through it. But that's really what the dogs are made at, is in those conditions, because if you're able to fight through that, then the game will be easy.
Yeah, if you can survive 100% humidity, you can survive just about anything. One thing that I appreciate in your press conference, you mentioned T5 a couple times, and people around here might not know that nickname for Tyrann Mathieu because we go by Honey Badger. I always appreciate how nicknames exist in different places. You played with him on the Texans. You didn't play with him on the Chiefs, but you obviously spent time on the Chiefs as well. What are your memories of playing with Tyrann as a rookie, and what are your kind of expectations of rejoining him this year?
Yeah, just his leadership qualities. He was a guy that knew a ton of football, was a savvy vet, was able to go beyond the playbook, and just had a really gifted feel for the game as far as feeling how pass concepts develop and being able to do things outside of the playbook, but still within the structure of the defense to go out and make some plays. And then quite possibly the most the most powerful thing is just his the way that he's able to speak, his public speaking skills, as far as being a leader of men, and his pregame speeches to get guys energized up and to buy into, feel like you're ready to run it through a wall to do whatever needs to be done to go out there and win. Was really second to none.
You mentioned defensive coordinator Brandon Staley earlier, and just curious if you've gotten to speak with him much, and what do you know about his defense coming to New Orleans?
Yeah, that is dynamic. I was actually on the phone with Derwin a couple of days ago. We talked a little bit about how he used Derwin, and then he's building the tape to show some ways how he's going to use me too. And, it's going to be different, but it's going to be really exciting because he's going to, try and put guys in positions to make some plays. So excited about getting into it, excited about actually being allowed to go out and talk football with them, because especially when you're on a new team, that's really all you really want to do is get down there and just get to it,
Yeah, I think most people don't realize how many rules there are about, actually like football conversations in the offseason and stuff like that. It is kind of an interesting thing. But I am curious, one thing that I've noticed about his defense is he likes to disguise a lot. And at the safety position, more so than maybe any other, you have a lot to do with that, whether you're disguising, single high, whatever kind of coverage you're in. How do you feel about that part of the game? Do you think that's confusing a quarterback, showing a quarterback one look and getting into another? What are your thoughts on that concept in general?
Yeah, I think that's one of my strengths. I think one of my strengths is being able to hold looks and organize the defense and talk to my partner safety as well as other DBs and be able to get guys on the same page so that we can present a different look that the quarterback might not be prepared for. Because this game in this day and age, you're the best quarterbacks in the league. You're Patrick Mahomes, you're Jalen Hurts, you're Justin Herbert. All of these guys, if you tell them what coverage you're in, they're just going to pick you apart, right? So if you're able to cause some confusion and make them have some post-snap reads, that's really where all the turnovers that big plays happen, because the quarterbacks holding on to the ball a little bit longer. D-line, Cam Jordan, Chase Young's going to have another second to get home, and then quarterback might make some errant throws that you're able to turn into some interceptions. So disguising in this league is critical, I think, to defensive success. So, it's good that that's one of the things we talked about when he was recruiting me, was that it will be a good fit in order to present these looks and not just give away the defenses to the quarterback and opposing teams.
The run with the Chiefs, the 2 championships you got back this year. I'm just curious, as you get some distance, some perspective from that, how do you view that run? And I think when you're in it, I'm sure it was hard to kind of get an idea of we just accomplished something incredible. And obviously losing the Super Bowl, I think it would be really easy to lose perspective that, hey, you're the first team to ever get back for the three-peat. There's been other teams trying to get to a third Super Bowl. They didn't get there. The Chiefs obviously didn't go your way. But what is kind of your thoughts on that stretch now that you can kind of look back on it and assess it?
Yeah, I would say that that the end game is in mind. We know that every team at the beginning of the season wants to go to that championship. You know that that's the end game in mind, and that should be on your bulletin board or whatever it is. That's the standard. But the way that you get there is one game at a time, and it's putting out your best week in and week out, taking no games off, no thinking that this game is already lost or already won, whatever it is, but expecting that every game will be tough. There were no easy games in any of those 3 years I was with the Chiefs, because you're playing against the NFL. It's the best of the best in the entire world. But if you approach it that way, and you approach it that you're prepared to play your best ball week in and week out, it gives you the best chance to go out and do it. So you don't get hung up on the mistakes. You have a process that you're always building towards. You want to be playing your best ball as you get to the postseason. You don't want to peak too soon. So it's okay to make mistakes during the season as long as every step is working towards that goal and you're focusing on it one game at a time.
And just kind of going into that a little bit more, we know Steve Spagnuolo here. He had a year as a defense coordinator, didn't go particularly well, but he's kind of reemerged as that guy over the last however many years. I've lost track with the Chiefs. What is it about him that has allowed him to kind of turn that defense into such a dominant group? And what are kind of your takeaways in general of why that defense has been so effective in his span there?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is what we just mentioned earlier, and that's disguises. I mean, Coach Spags, we spend a ton of time on disguises and presenting looks to confuse quarterbacks so that it gave opportunities to go out and make plays. Like, we didn't sit in one coverage. We didn't sit in one look. We tried to make it as difficult as possible on the opposing team, and that allowed us to create some pressure. And then other than that, it's having cerebral players that can handle the playbook. Myself, Nick Bolton, Kim McDuffie's, whatever it is, same type of guys that we'll have with the Saints, but having guys that can handle the playbook and don't make mental errors and give up explosives. So disguises, no explosive plays, and physical DBs, because every team wants to run the ball to the corner. But if your corners are cutting people in half, then there is no run game. The run game doesn't exist. And then you force them into a one-dimensional offense, and then your defensive line can go eat, and your DBs and linebackers can go eat in the coverage system too. So all of those pieces add up to the formula, and you just put them together, and then, the magic just happens.
Justin, I know fans know you as a smart, tough guy that loves to lower the boom on the field, but what about away from the game of football? I know you've recently just joined the ranks of the dad life, but what are some things that Justin Reid enjoys doing away from football?
Yeah, favorite hobbies. Really like chess. I really like playing golf. I got the golf bug pretty bad. I'm actually out on the course right now because I just love to go play. And then, man, that's really, I do that, and I do a little bit of real estate too. So those are the 4 phases of my life, man. And I never get tired of it. And, I'm a guy that eats the same breakfast day in and day out, and I never get sick of it. And doing these 4 things, football, golf, chess, and real estate, I just never can get enough of it.
What's the goal score today?
If I'm shooting in the 80s, I got a good feeling about it.
All right, that's good.
I feel good about being rich.
Yeah, I guess in just in general, just one last question. For fans who aren't familiar with your game, obviously a lot of locals will know your brother from LSU. You obviously went out to Stanford, so didn't see as many of those games. What should someone walking into the Superdome expect to experience when they watch Justin Reid out on the field for the first time?
Probably that guy when you turn on 2005 Madden and everyone just loved using the hit stick all the time.
Yeah.
A guy like that, and a guy like you said, a guy who I feed on physicality. I love physical games. I love punishing wide receivers. They do try and block me, or I want them to be thinking about me when they're running their routes to the middle of the field, and maybe that causes a drop pass or a tip ball that turns to an interception. But pride myself on that, and then also pride myself on being a big communicator on the field. No mental errors on my side of the field because we just don't make those mistakes. So having guys in the right position and then making the plays that just are put there for you. Don't miss the layup.
Justin Reid, new Saints safety. Definitely appreciate the time. Enjoy the golf game today, and definitely looking forward to seeing you at practices come off-season workouts. Congrats, my man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks again to Justin Reid for joining us for that quick interview. Steve, what are your kind of impressions of Justin? He seems like a very strong-minded individual, but like a guy who understands how to walk in and be a leader of that defense. What were your takeaways?
Gotta love a guy that's from here, excited to come back home. And, you mentioned having a little one now. At least he'll have plenty of, I'm assuming, family around to help him out here locally. And I'm sure the fam will be out in full force too for Saints games. You've heard him mention how he can't wait to eventually get the shot at leading the Who Dat chant, which is awesome. But, guy went to Stanford. He's playing with a good head on his shoulders, paired up with a guy like Tyrann Mathieu in the secondary, even with the uptick in age for Mathieu. Now everyone's talked about the drop off. I still think the key is Matthew's mind for the game still allows him to be a pretty darn good player in the NFL. And I just feel like Reid is kind of cut from that mold and appreciate the leadership, the football IQ, and the passion to want to knock somebody out on your football team.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes from Justin was, "Every team wants to run the ball to the corner, but if your corners are cutting people in half, then there is no run game. The run game doesn't exist."
Hello.
That's a violent.
Right, you got my attention right there.
Violent imagery, but no, I mean, that's what you see when you go watch Justin Reid on film. Is like you mentioned, he's a very high-level processor of the game of football, and I think that's where you're excited about the pairing of Tyrann Mathieu and Justin Reid, because you just have two very big football minds combining, and they can both do everything, and I think that's where the pairing of him and Will Harris last year became difficult to navigate, because Will was a very, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but he did one thing a lot better than the other thing, and that one thing was playing in the box and getting downhill and laying big hits, and like that's who he is as a player. It's funny that he went to Washington to replace Jeremy Chin, because I feel like if I had to compare Will Harris to any safety in the NFL today, it would probably be Jeremy Chin. It's just two guys who are not afraid to go stick their nose in, lay big hits, and do whatever. But outside of that, I felt like he was limited. I think it's why later in the year, Tyrann Mathieu was getting frustrated, and he was getting very frustrated. Like we talk about, like, oh, Cam Jordan didn't like Todd Grantham, right? Like, and he was making that clear. Like through it in the second half of that season, basically from the Joe Woods takes over the defense point of the season onward, Tyrann was raging like constantly. Like, and I don't know how many people saw this, because I don't know how much they showed on the broadcast, but like there was, at least 3 or 4 plays a game that I would watch him walk to the sidelines and screaming at his coaches, and like there was that clip that was attributed to Malik Neighbors, or the quote that was attributed to Malik Neighbors that Tyrann then took credit for, which is like, you're calling plays like I'm not even out here. Like that's what he was frustrated about. He was frustrated that the defense was forcing him to cover grass and not allowing him to do what he does best, which is, being a step ahead of the offense of teams who are trying to do something, and he understands a way to go beat that, but he's not being allowed to go do that. He's being asked to stand in center field and basically cover grass, right? And I think what the pairing of Justin Reid and Tyrann Mathieu will allow this Saints team to do is to let one or both of those guys be more aggressive and to disguise a lot more. That's what Justin said, like one of his initial conversations with Brandon Staley was about. Like that's what he does. It's one of his best strengths, is the ability to kind of hold looks and roll into things late, confuse the offense, confuse the quarterback, make them change the look or change a look on them and force them to make a post-snap read instead of a pre-snap read, which, as we get further and further away from the Tom Brady era and the Drew Brees era of guys who it feels like you couldn't confuse, right? Because they just knew exactly what you were doing before you knew what you were doing. Like we're getting further and further away from that era. The modern batch of quarterbacks, like a lot of guys excel at different parts of the game, but they don't necessarily excel in, okay, like you can't confuse this guy. Like they want, like guys who want to extend plays, they want to kind of create off schedule. That's a whole different part of the game. I'm okay with getting them off schedule. Now, you got to be able to do that, and you have to be able to do that without creating a situation where you're out of position. And I think that's the kind of give and take. The other thing Justin said is that he was talking to Derwin James about how Brandon Staley used Derwin James and how like there's things that he's excited about being able to do. And that's I think Brandon Staley's defense, you need smart, capable safeties to make it work, because it's a very confusing scheme. There's a lot of moving parts, and you need kind of that guy who can put everyone in the right place, at least from the second and third levels, right? And I think that's what you have with Justin. So I really think that's why it's like, okay, why did the Saints go after Justin Reid? It's because of that kind of high IQ versatility that you can really see if you go back and watch Justin on the Chiefs over the last few years, you can really see that.
Yeah, it's definitely nice for Brandon Staley to be coming over, and that new defensive piece you added is a guy like Justin Reid. Just it wasn't the sexiest pick in free agency throughout the NFL, but I think a really freaking good one for the Saints that kind of gets underlooked.
It's what they needed, right? Like I think that was this offseason, it has boiled down to needs versus wants. And okay, if you need it, we're going to go get it. If you just want it, then we might say, yeah, let's look at it next year. Like that's like you needed a premier edge rusher that, is in a reasonable point in his career, and you got it in Chase Young. Like you needed a strong, high IQ safety who can go up and take hits, who can go up and make big hits, who can sit back in coverage, who you feel like can do everything. That's what you got, right? You needed an outside corner who, you feel like you have some confidence in, and you got that in Ike Adam. Now, I don't know if that's your ideal scenario, but you got it, right? Like you needed a tight end, whether it was Juwan Johnson or somebody else. You needed to go find a strong move tight end, and you got it, right? Now, you probably wanted a bigger bodied possession receiver. You didn't really get it. And you probably wanted a better option as a starting left guard. You didn't necessarily get it. And I think that's kind of where everything lands right now.
Got the draft for those positions too, so we'll see. I think going with the safety position, you talk about running backs being devalued in the NFL. I wonder if the safety position seems so undervalued. You got on the free agency market still right now a guy that everybody coveted last year, and the Saints were in on with Justin Simmons, but right now he's a free agent still.
Yeah, safety's funny because some teams desperately want safeties and are willing to pay safeties a ton of money, and some teams are just like, we can literally go find a safety anywhere.
Together, right.
And I think the Saints are somewhere in the middle where it's like they see the value in safeties in terms of, okay, we're not going to just go draft a rookie and throw him out there and say good luck, but they're also not willing to pay over a certain mark for that safety, and that kind of $10 million a year range is right about where they're willing to go. And that's where, because like last year was weird with Will Harris. Like typically you're going to see the Saints roll out a couple safeties who are making some money, and Malcolm Jenkins and Marcus Williams was a weird example because you drafted Marcus Williams and you played him, but like Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu, you brought in both those guys on pretty similar contracts, and that's kind of the contract you have Justin Reid on now. So I think this is kind of where they want to be with their safety room.
I like the pairing. It's you got the two boot boys in the backfield now.
Yeah, it's what you were hoping Marcus May was going to be. I think. It just never. You gambled a little bit on Marcus May. He was coming off an injury. He was dealing with some off the field stuff, and he just didn't deliver. And so you're hoping that you can get back. You can get to that kind of pairing that you wanted. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back. We're going to go over some rule changes. The tush push. I think if the tush push had a less fun name to say, it would already be banned. But either way, let's hit the break. We're going to come back, dive into all those changes, how some of them could benefit the Saints, whether the Saints are going to start running the tush push if it's not banned, that sort of thing. Let's dive into all that. This is Inside Black and Gold. Stick around. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. One more segment here. We're going to start talking about what everyone loves, which is more rules. Who doesn't love a nice new rule thrown into the mix to change up everything? And I don't know, Steve, have you been following the rule changes, all the things that happen? Like that's the only thing that is really entertaining about the owners' meetings is seeing all these guys fight over stuff like Nick Sirianni and all these other coaches
That, and I laugh when some things happen, like we'll talk about the expanded replay, and now people are bitching, oh, it's going to make the game so much longer. But yeah, they're going to get it right.
What do you mean?
The new expanded replay rules and, the new technology they plan on using.
No, I don't think that. So they're not really expanding replay in terms of you don't get more challenges. It shouldn't slow down the game.
No, but what can be reviewed?
No, I think they're just the only change for from a replay perspective is you can overrule penalties. So if someone gets called for a face mask and it's not a face mask, it gets clear that it kind of looked like it because his head turned, but he didn't actually grab the face mask, they can pick up that flag. That was one of the rule changes that actually did happen. But I don't think it should extend games. Because that's kind of it should if you've been following the replay assist stuff, it's pretty quick. They do a pretty good job because it's usually pretty cut and dried. If there's any question of oh, he might have got a finger in there, then they won't overrule that penalty, for example. But that's really what's changed from a replay perspective is you can pick up flags. Now you can't put down flags. So Saints fans who want to teleport back to 2018 the NFC Championship, which is technically 2019, if they're like, well, if we had this then, it wouldn't have changed anything because you can't even the most obvious pass interference penalty of all time, which we know what that is. You could not under these rules go and say here's a flag. So to me, it's hey, if someone calls a face mask and it's not a face mask, that's something we should fix.
No, like I said, I felt like a lot of folks crying on Twitter about the length of football games.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. If they did it the other way, I actually think it would increase the length of a football game, because if, for example, like there's an obvious face mask and they do a replay assisted call it, then what would otherwise be a running clock, right? If say it's a running play and there's a face mask and they like, actually everyone stop, replay assist says that's a penalty. So not only are you not running the next play, you have to mark off 15 yards and then go, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like that would, in my opinion, slow it down a lot more. Whereas like if a penalty gets called, it's already stopping the flow of the game anyway. And I think in this case, it's just, hey, we're going to fix the blatantly obvious things that were messed up. So that is something that did change. A couple things that got tabled that are going to get talked about at a later date. So the first was, well, actually, it's not the first, but this is the first one I'll mention, is the Lions wanted, and these are both the Lions, actually. The Lions proposed that open seating in the playoffs. So if a wild card team has a better record than the division winner, the wild card team gets a higher seed. And I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's just like otherwise,
we'll just do away with divisions then.
Just get rid of divisions.
Yeah.
Like if we're going to do that, then just get rid of divisions, because those games should matter. And if they don't matter, then like it's like you want a home game, win your division, man. Like I get it. It's harder for some teams than others, but like that's one of the perks of playing in a weak division, right?
And that's cyclical, as we all know.
Yeah. Like, you know, it used to be the Saints getting screwed over by having to play a road game against the Seahawks, right? Who were clearly a worse team, but you know, now it's the NFC North getting screwed over, right? It's now the NFC South is getting the benefit of that. So I don't know. Like it's funny that it's the Lions. There's some NFC North pride going on because the Lions are presenting that argument, saying like the Vikings got boned, and then like, yeah, but you were the reason. Why don't you lose a few more games and then the Vikings
help
can
them out, right?
Anyway, so I don't think that's ever going to happen. But the other thing that got pushed was the tush push. And so this will all be discussed later on this offseason.
I'm so sad that you're against this.
You're sad that I'm against the tush push?
Yes.
Who's for it? Who wants that?
Stop it. That's my whole thing with it. I'm in the camp as I feel like the data of this being an injury risk just isn't there.
It's not. I agree with that.
And I don't know. To me, the scrum, what screams football than that big scrum and someone you having to beat the team up front?
That's not football. That's rugby. That's literally scrum is a rugby term. Like,
okay.
Why don't we just go to how about we go back to the rule where you have to actually touch the football to the ground to get to score? They can like pick them up and carry them out. I mean, why don't we just play rugby? Anyway, so here's the thing. Rule changes happen.
Throwing people in the end zone.
Why don't we just pick up the quarterback like a battering ram? Like have a quarterback on the roster whose only job is to get picked up and slammed into the line a bunch of times. Anyway, like one of those medieval
battering ram. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so there's a few reasons why rules change in the NFL, right? For the biggest one and the most common one is injuries. And so that's why you're changing the kickoffs and, they don't want quarterbacks to get hurt. So they make it so you can't hit a quarterback high. You can't hit them low. You can't breathe on them too hard, that sort of thing. Like, okay, injury risk, whatever. Like we're going to eliminate chop blocks because it's dangerous. We're going to eliminate this and this, that, and the other thing because there's demonstrated injury risk. So that's one. And yes, that's a common one, but it's not the only one, right? There's another one that kind of halfway filters in, which is like fairness, the spirit of fairness. Now, I think that is probably the least often used as a reason, but it is there. Like if it's an unfair situation and we can come up with a way to make a fair situation. But we've spent years and years making rules to benefit the offense, right? Like, so spirit of fairness is like, whatever. Like, I don't even care. Like, throw that out there. But outside of injuries, the biggest reason rules get changed is because the game should be fun to watch. The game is entertainment. There's an entertainment value that needs to be protected by the league. And that's why you see rule changes. Like, why do you think that defenders are not allowed to touch a receiver? It's not an injury risk. It's because people enjoy watching receivers catch the ball and run, and they want to see 90-yard receptions. They don't want to see 10 straight incompletions because the physical defensive back is just punching this guy in the face, and and he's not strong enough to do anything about it, right? Like, that's what the NFL wants, is they want offense. They want excitement. They want exciting plays. You know, the least exciting play I can think of, a play where all 22 players on the field are within 5 yards of each other, and 2 of them are pushing the quarterback in the back, and the others are like, okay, let's see if we can stop him from getting 6 inches. Let's do that 20 times a game. No, that's not what you want. And there's a reason that the people who are fighting against it are like, hey, it's not about injuries. It's a football question. And the thing is, there is not like a single documented case of an injury happening on one of those plays. Now, I will tell you that if it doesn't happen this year, inevitably a quarterback will get hurt running that play. And then suddenly it'll be about injuries, right? It'll be like the Trevor Lawrence thing where, oh, well, he does a late slide and gets hit in the face. And suddenly we're talking about injuries when it's like, well, you could have just said last year that quarterbacks weren't allowed to slide late. But no, instead, we're going to talk about the defense and the defense. So like the first time a quarterback gets hurt because someone's trying to do something that doesn't make sense, or like grabs a face mask and yanks his head around, some guy gets whiplash. Anyway, then it's going to become injuries. But like, look at baseball, right? Why do you think they have a pitch clock now? Is that a safety thing? No, it's this game's getting boring.
Speed it up.
Speed it up, guys, right? Why did they ban shifts? Was it a safety thing? No, it's because when I have my star hitter who likes to pull the ball, hitting a screaming line drive through what would be the gap, and instead there's a 5th defender on that side of the field, yeah, that's bad for the game. Let's just change it, right? Just say, hey, you got to stay in your goddamn position, all right? Let's move on. Basketball, remember back when, remember Hack-a-Shack? Remember that? You could just foul guys, like, oh, let's make the game Shaq shooting the 25 free throws. That's what people want to see. No, okay, we'll change the rules. We'll get rid of that. Transition take fouls, where every fast break you grab a guy so he can't go get a dunk. Okay, got rid of that. There was a point where the NBA said, like, hey, no more zone defenses. We want dunks. Defensive 3 seconds. Like, you can't stand in the lane. We want people to be able to dunk, right? So, like, every sport since the beginning of time has made rule changes based on this is boring and it's not entertaining to watch, and we don't want to see it anymore, so let's not do it anymore. And that's why the tush push will inevitably get banned, because the longer they allow it to go on, the more teams will start running it. You've seen the Bills running it more than any other team now that isn't the Eagles, and Sean McDermott's against it. Sean McDermott.
That's why I'm scratching my head.
Right, but that's because he's the perfect example. The Bills are the perfect example. Like, yeah, they got pretty good at it. So we're going to see more and more teams getting good at it to the point where 5 years from now, okay, instead of just the Eagles, it's now the Eagles and the Bills and like 4 other teams that have the personnel and want to do it. And so suddenly we have 5 teams that are doing this all the time. And then 3 years from then, it'll be 12 teams. And then eventually you're going to get to a point where if you're not running this play every time you're in short yardage, you're wasting an opportunity. Right? Just like more and more teams decided we're going to start fouling the center because he can't make free throws. And more teams decided we're going to start shifting all of our infielders every time we have a pull hitter. Right? Until the point that the league has to do something, because I am tired of freaking watching all 22 players in a scrum like we're watching rugby. All that is to say, whether it is banned this year, whether it is banned next year or the year after that, ultimately, it's going to be banned because it is a boring play to watch.
I just look at it as being more physical up front and, finding a way to stop it. I know the Eagles have been super, successful with it, 81%. So we're going to have to put an asterisk next to their Super Bowl after you end up banning this play?
No, that's the same reason that you don't put an asterisk next to like Super Bowl 1 because there were a bunch of uncalled pass interference penalties. Like there used to be a rule in the NFL that was like you can't push a guy out of bounds. You change rules.
Yeah.
Remember the force out? Chris Collinsworth still says during games, like, there's no force out rule anymore. I'm like, Chris, there hasn't been a force out rule in like 15 years. You're going to have to change your line here. Like, there's kids who don't even know what you're talking about. We're not talking about Joe Juravicious. Anyway.
I'm hoping the opposite, that it doesn't go away this year or in the future. I don't have an issue with it. I mean, I am an Eagles fan, so that might be part of it, but I'd love to see the Saints do it with like a Taysom Hill.
See, but that's the thing. I don't want to see more of that play. I want to see less of that play because that play sucks. Anyway, this is what Kellen Moore had to say about it.
Yeah, obviously, I'm very comfortable with the play. There's no injury data. Percentage-wise, the likelihood of converting on it's pretty much the same as any other run. I don't see any issues.
What do you think the I know the Green Bay said pace the play and they said player safety, but as you mentioned, the injury data is not actually there. It's kind of all hypothetical and what could happen.
Yeah.
What do you think is is there another reason for this proposal?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, most of it's subjective. Obviously, factual stuff is pretty consistent. So, obviously, I feel very comfortable with the league keeping it.
How will you feel if you are the last person to have called that?
Give credit to Jalen and all those guys for creating a play that someone decided we're just going to make a rule up to stop it.
Do you think as it's written right now, I know there's kind of a lot of gray area with what immediately at the snap means, because if you line up in that I formation and the push comes after that might still be allowed with the way that it's written now.
Yeah, I guess, we'll let them wait for a second and then push them. The defense can push it's written right now, so it's not like the defense can't push as well. So,
Is it something that you want to spin off variations of it if it doesn't pass today, like for next season?
Certainly, it's been a really good play. Obviously, I do think personnel has something to do with it. Obviously, other teams have tried it and haven't had as much success. Jalen, the offensive line of Philly, they've been committed to it, and so it's an investment thing.
Do you feel like you have the personnel here to try it or do it?
I don't know. We'll see. Obviously, I think other teams have tried to replicate it and have not had success. I think investment is, Nick's done a phenomenal job. It's a huge investment to execute that play at a really high level, and they put a lot of time and effort into it.
Did you need to lobby you at all, or were you like, I'm on your side, man?
I got Nick. Yeah, we're good.
I laugh at the notion that do the Saints have the personnel to do it? They do not have the Eagles O-line, and they do not have a Jalen Hurts at quarterback.
It's not even about necessarily the O-line as a whole. It's about, do you have a center who's willing to basically army crawl and do that?
McCoy would.
I think they have a center that is capable of being that guy, and they have big tackles. And I think it's more about they don't have the quarterback to do it. Like, I think you need like a Jalen Hurts type player to, like a strong, like Jalen is squatting like 600 pounds. So like that's a big part of it.
Let's try this in preseason with Jake Haener, see what happens.
And there's a reason the Bills are the second most team to run it, because Josh Allen's another like big strong guy. And so I mean that's part of it, is like the investment, like you talked about. But here's the thing: over time, more and more teams are going to say it is foolish for us not to invest and start doing this play more and more. And I think that's just what the NFL wants to avoid, is this rugby style play. And here's the thing: back in 2004, they changed the rule to make it so you were allowed to push and pull players. Like, you were never allowed to do that prior to that. So that's part of what they're going to be talking about in a few months, is like, can you just reinstate that language from that previous rule and do it that way? So I think I understand. Like, I don't think you should start banning OP plays just because they're OP, but I don't know if it's going to make the game more exciting. Like, if a 4th and 1 at the goal line is suddenly an interesting play again, which is like, is that what you want for the biggest play of your season, to come down to like, oh, I wonder if he can push him really hard in the back? No, I don't see it. But anyway, that's where we're at. And it's not going to change right now. It'll be interesting to see if the Saints do run it, because I think they do have a Taysom Hill who should be able to run that.
Right, because Carr ain't doing it.
And you shouldn't have Carr do it. There's actually no benefit to having Carr do it if you're going to have Taysom Hill on the field anyway, because it's not a play that you're faking. Right? Like, the only reason you would say we got to put the quarterback in there, and that's why you've seen, people say like, well, it doesn't happen that much outside of maybe the Eagles or the Bills, but a lot of teams have started using their tight end, and having Mark Andrews did it last year, where they, like the Ravens would have Mark Andrews come, and then so like teams will start doing it without their quarterback.
Yeah,
because there's actually, like, in a lot of instances, we don't want to project what we're going to do, because then it becomes obvious. But because it's so unstoppable, teams are going to start. You don't have to maintain any illusion that you might run a real play. You just have to. Like, you could put Taysom Hill in there and say, we're going to do this, and still successfully do it. I could talk about this for 45 minutes. Let's get through some of the other rules. So, overtime rule changes. So, basically, the NFL is changing the regular season overtime rule to match the postseason overtime rule, in terms of, even if you score a touchdown, the other team gets the ball, which they initially had tried to make it a 15-minute overtime. In order to pass the rule change, they had to bump that down to 10 minutes. Now, it might not sound like a lot, but how many drives do you think you can get in an overtime game where, if both teams score a touchdown, that game's probably ending in a tie. Right? Like, so I think what this change is going to do is, yes, it makes it so teams don't get kind of screwed over on that, oh, they allowed a touchdown, so the offense never gets the ball. But
increase in ties happening.
I think you're going to have more ties. Right. And I don't know if that's, I kind of feel like that's not going to have the effect the NFL wants, is when we see ties become a more common thing. Because there's just not that much time.
That's where another one on the old curmudgeon, if you want to say, it's like, I like sudden death.
Yeah, football's tough because it's like, yeah, I mean, if you're Pat Mahomes and you're the Chiefs and you're like, we're going to score if we get the ball, but you never get the ball. Like, that's a tough way to lose a game. I actually think the college rules are the best now that they've changed them from being indefinite. Because that was the only thing, is like, if you have like an 18 overtime game, like that's too much. But like, I do think that if they just changed it to that, we would be solving that problem, at least for the regular season, not playoffs. Playoffs, right. I want the actual football game to be decided by actual football. And in the playoffs, you're playing an indefinite amount of time. Like, you're playing until someone wins. So there is no tie. Now in the regular season, it's like, I would rather, if those are my options, to play the college system or to play an NFL system where we get ties way more often, I'd rather do the college system. So
how about we go to soccer and we just do a kickoff and see who can make the most field goals?
I mean, that's basically what it becomes in college after a while. It's just competitive 2-point conversions.
Right.
Well, what is that if not like penalty kicks? So, and I don't mind that. I actually think that's a good way to solve it, right? You at least are on an even playing field. And I think that's the issue, is in overtime of an NFL game under the past rules, one team is playing offense, one team is playing defense. Whereas like in every other sport, it'd be like you have to do both. But in football, you don't. If you have a good enough offense, you don't have to worry about it. Anyway, so that's the rule change. We'll see how it goes. I wouldn't be surprised if that changes next year, if you end up with like 20 ties this year. But like we said, we were looking at this earlier, the Saints haven't played an overtime game since 2021. They went the entire Dennis Allen era without an overtime football game.
Yeah, it didn't register that it was that far off. I thought there was an overtime game last year. I was wrong, obviously.
Well, they could have gotten overtime against the Commanders if they had chosen to go to overtime. They chose to go for 2. The Rams game was very close to coming down to overtime as well, but they would have gone for 2. But those were both the Darren Rizzi era. So the Dennis Allen's era really didn't come that close to going to overtime. I guess the Jaguars game where Foster dropped the touchdown, I think might have gone to overtime. There was a couple games that they came up short of forcing overtime. So a few others. Okay, so yes, replay assist. We mentioned that. They've changed rules involving how the K-balls are prepared, how you can talk to players during free agency. The Lions wanted to eliminate the automatic first down rule for defensive holding and illegal contact, which I actually agree with, because I think that's crazy. If you're on like a 3rd and 40 and they get a defensive holding penalty, you get a first down. But if that penalty doesn't exist and it's just 5 yards, what's preventing you from holding every play in like a 3rd and forever situation, right? Rather than getting beat, hold, because eventually you should be able to just get a stop without fouling. So I just think I don't think that's ever going to happen, because I do think that the automatic first down is like, if you're going to eliminate that, then it has to be a bigger penalty. And I don't think you want a bigger penalty.
Yeah. I don't know how you come up with a bigger penalty than that.
You make it 10 yards instead of 5. But then that's always a 10-yard penalty. And that seems like a pretty steep, like, there's really no way to fix that problem, is my point. Like, either the yardage is too much or the automatic first down is too much. So
it does make it, when it's like 3rd and 34, like you're mentioning, all of a sudden you got like a handsy defensive back making, all of a sudden, boom, resets the downs for the other team. Just real demoralizing too.
Well, I mean, the solution is don't hold in that situation.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if they're not going to get 35 yards in that play, don't hold. Like, that's on the defense. That's why it's never going to pass. And you need 24 votes out of the 32 teams to pass a rule change.
How many? What was it? The number? Do you recall offhand for the tush push that were in favor of changing it?
I don't know offhand. I don't think they actually
got in double digits though.
They didn't vote yesterday. So it's tough to know. I mean, like until someone actually goes in there and votes, like they could be loud as anybody, but and then it's like, actually, it's all politics. And that's why when I say like the league wants something, like in a lot of these cases, yes, it's on the teams, but in most of the time it's like nudge, nudge, wink, wink, like, okay, you're going to vote for this and then I'll support your proposal for something else, right? Like it's never as simple as like, I don't like it, so I'm going to vote against it. Two other things, virtual measurements. Sony's Hawkeye, they're going to start measuring virtually the line to gain. Now, this should theoretically save some time in terms of you don't have to wait for the chain gang to come on the field. But the chain gang is still going to be there, and I'm pretty sure that if teams protest the virtual line, you'll still have to bring the chain gang out. Right. Because they're going to have to give some level of like, well, I don't trust that. So you might end up seeing it take more time if and I don't know what the rules are going to be relative to that, but that's how they're going to do it. And I did see it happen in one preseason game last year against the 49ers. It took way too long, so hopefully they've speeded it up. But that's going to be something they add.
Yeah, it feels like this is something that you feel like technology should be able to help solve the ancient, the usage of a chain game. But you mentioned there's still that secondary option. And you can imagine there's going to be times where I agree that coaches are going to be like, I don't trust the damn spot on that. I want the chain gang out there to affirm that call.
Yeah, but it's also not going to solve the actual problem, which is the eyes of the officials are still deciding where the ball goes. Like, yeah, it solves that problem of, yes, the archaic method of actually carrying a chain on the field and stretching it out. But there's also a little level of drama associated with that I appreciate. Like, it's kind of that's kind of like that moment in the NFL. It's two links, they're stretching out the chain and it goes like this, like that's, I find that fun. I don't necessarily like taking that away because I don't think there was a problem with that. They were pretty quick at it. Like that was never the thing that I watch and I was like, that's why the game is taking too long. Now, like reviews for everything, that does take a lot longer. If the actual spotting does not speed up, like if it doesn't actually go faster than the chain gang, then that's a problem for me. Because like, why are we doing this if it's not actually faster? But like at the end of the day, my issues always come down to like that guy, that was a terrible spot, right? Like he clearly was there and they marked him here, or he was here and they marked him there too far. And that's Hawkeye's not going to change that. That's still going to be an issue.
Yeah, I don't know why we haven't gone to the chip in ball either to help with spotting and for like, did it cross the plane? Yeah.
No, I mean, I mean, you have to imagine the technology's got to exist to some level. But nope, we're not there. A couple of things. Christmas Day triple header now. They had a double header last year. That means 20% of the NFL basically is going to be working on Christmas, which, guys, you already have Thanksgiving. You already have Black Friday. You already have Christmas Eve. You already have whatever, New Year's Day, New Year's Eve. Like, do we really need another game on Christmas?
They're going to war with the NBA, baby.
They've already won that war.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is like, thank goodness the Saints are so boring that they're definitely not going to be in any of these games because they won't be able to watch these games.
They're going to be on Netflix. I can see the NFL going, Christmas in Buffalo for the Saints.
Yeah, but why? They're not trying to punish teams. They're trying to get games that people are going to watch.
I don't know.
Like
Coach Kellen Moore, revitalizing the Saints in Buffalo for Christmas.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna. Maybe next year.
The snow globe. You just don't want to go back in the cold weather game.
I don't. You're right. But also like, that was one of the most miserable 3-year stretches when the Saints became like the de facto Thanksgiving team, and they just kept putting them on Thanksgiving. It was like, guys, I don't want to watch the Saints on Thanksgiving. I'll watch them on Sunday like all the other plebes. And thankfully, that last Thanksgiving game, they were so bad that they were like, never again. Hashtag never again. That was the game against the Bills.
Definitely affirm those are rough times when you're having to work all that, and especially if you're on the road and away. You say, oh well, you could just have Thanksgiving leftovers, but it's still not the same. It's more of the family atmosphere, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's miserable. But anyway, so that's going to happen. And there's just going to be more and more of these freaking games, whatever. Final rule change that we'll talk about. Dynamic kickoff, not going away. It is here to stay. And the biggest change is that touchbacks are now the 35-yard line instead of the 30-yard line. It's what Darren Rizzi wanted from the beginning. But in order to grease the skids on getting it done, they set it at the 30. And he knew immediately when they did that it wasn't going to have the impact that it could have had in year one. But it was like, hey, we'll ride it out. Hopefully this time next year, there'll be a little more acceptance of that this worked. The injury rates were down and we can just push, hey, 5 more yards. And that's what it's going to be. And I'll tell you, like, I think that's a paradigm shift in terms of teams. No team in the NFL should be okay with saying, yeah, they're going to start their next drive at the 35-yard line. Because, yeah, it doesn't sound like a ton when you kind of just list it out. But when you actually look at, like, if you're looking down at a field and a team starting at the 30 versus starting at the 35, it looks so much like one first down and you're at midfield.
Yeah. That's wild.
One chunk play and you're in field goal range.
Boom. Right.
Especially now with the distance kickers can kick from. So, like, yeah, I don't think any team in the NFL should be going into this offseason saying, we're just going to kick touchbacks. Whereas, like, I think a lot of teams in the NFL went into last season saying, yeah, we'll see how it works, but we'll probably just kick touchbacks. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I have the stats here. Yeah. So the return rate last year was 33%, which was up significantly, which the kickoff was effectively a dead play last year. The return rate went up to 33%. They're projecting that with the change, return rates are going to get from like 60 to 70%. So 2/3 of all kickoffs they expect to be returned. And a majority of the ones that aren't returned are probably accidental kicks into the end zone or situations where you will be better off just giving them the ball at the 35 rather than risking a kickoff return touchdown. Like, there's like 3 seconds left in the game, for example, and you just don't want, like, and you're up by 5, right? And then, yeah, kick it off, touchback, whatever, or at the end of the half, for example. But, like, there's gonna be way fewer teams just saying, okay, kick it in there. The Saints returned 37 kicks last year, which was 7th in the NFL. They actually weren't that good at it. So their average return was 27, which was tied for 20th. Whereas their total returns was 7. So they, and part of that's like, hey, we didn't have a premier returner, right? Like, you spend a lot of the time, hey, Jamal Williams is back there. Why? And like that sort of thing. But the Saints covered 57 kicks, which was 2nd in the NFL. Washington actually covered the most by a wide margin. They covered 73. So they really embraced this rule. The Saints' average return allowed was to the 26-yard line. So by virtue of those numbers, like, covering a kick versus kicking into the end zone, you're stealing 9 yards, which that's a no-brainer. Like, the difference between, like again, you look down at the field, a team starting at the 26 versus starting at the 35, huge difference. And I think the Saints are going to benefit, and teams in general that actually did this last year and kind of embraced the coverage aspect of it are going to benefit this year, because you're not really going to have a choice of whether you want to do it or not. Like, you have to do it. And we'll see how that goes. I think Darren Rizzi, when he talked about it, he said the average return last year on kickoffs was to the 28.8 yard line. So 1.2 yards saved versus 6.2 yards saved is a pretty big difference. So, yeah, we'll see.
The Riz making waves in the NFL. That's for sure. I'm just hoping we get to see, more of these returns like they're hoping for, though. I don't know. I just felt overall it didn't have that effect last season for me.
Yeah, well, in part because they kept the rules from how you could align yourself on returns were pretty strict. And so that eliminated a lot of the options that you could have. They did change that this year. So, you're going to be getting a lot more opportunities to return kicks, right? Like, the Saints only returned 37, and they were 7th in the NFL, right? That's 2 per game, a little bit more than 2 per game, right? So that number is probably going to be a lot higher this year. And, and that's going to be true for everybody. So they also didn't have Rashid Shaheed. Like, did he return any? I feel like even the ones that he was back there for, they kicked away from him. So, like, do you have two good return guys? Like, I think if you had Dante Pettis and Rashid Shaheed back there all year long, you would have had a much better chance. But you do also want one of those guys to block. So I don't know. It's just going to be like the point is, it's not going away,
right?
And it's actually going to get more and more part of the game. Like that's going to add 4 or 5 high intensity plays in a game that weren't there previously. So I don't know. I don't think the Saints, and I think the Saints covered them pretty well. Like they had a few long returns, but I don't think they had a return past midfield all season. Like I know Washington had at least one where they allowed a kick return touchdown, and that was against the Cowboys in that crazy game where the kicker actually missed an extra point. Yeah.
You're definitely going to have to focus special teams to be able to, as the kicking team, not have that touchback.
Yeah, no, kickers are going to have to spend more time working on it. Tackling, like they're going to have to worry about tackling more. Blake Grupe, the one time he was asked to make a tackle, he did a pretty good job. So we'll see. But either way, like I think that, the Saints obviously don't have Riz anymore, but I think Phil Galliano, one of the reasons you keep him around is because you think, he did a pretty good job in that job. So we'll see. But yeah, that's all I got. Anything else before we clear out of here?
No, sir. Gearing up to do another mock draft. I'm addicted. I just keep rattling them out, and I feel like every single time there's a different person available for me at number 9 for the Saints.
It's about that time. Mock draft number 3. I think we should do a trade this time. I think that's the next mock draft. We should I'll trade up, you trade down, or vice versa, and we'll see how that goes. Does that work for you?
Good. Yeah.
All right. Maybe that'll be Tuesday's episode. We'll see. We'll see if anything happens between now and then. I think we're in quiet season right now where it's like, oh, so-and-so's visiting so-and-so. And then, yeah, that's it. That's all you get.
Right. The draft, it's kind of came, I don't want to say like it snuck up, but it definitely all of a sudden, bam, we're in April now.
Yeah. Less than a month away.
Just, I know that means good times for the draft and then also good times for Jazz Fest.
Yeah. And we're going to have that marathon of draft day. It's going to be a crazy draft this year because the Saints actually have picks.
Yeah.
Like last year was kind of was on easy mode because you had the first and second round pick and then you didn't have to deal with anything else for
you kick back
third, fourth, or most of the fifth round. So anyway, yeah. Day 2 is going to be crazy. 3 picks and day 2 is a lot.
Who knows? Maybe they make day 1 crazy too. I mean, the 9th overall selection too is there's still a lot of spotlight on it since you're early on. I know the first round is definitely very intense and highly covered, but when you're in the top 10, I don't know, it seems to get a lot more of a spotlight on it.
I mean, I like it because you don't have to like the Brian Brzee draft was annoying because we were just sitting there for like 2 hours and waiting for, at least you get it over with early and you can do the rest of the coverage.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Right.
Although it would be nice if they just traded all their day 2 and day 3 picks and got an extra first, and then we get it all done in one swoop.
The year that they got Ingram and Cam Jordan, I was actually covering a Hornets playoff game, so I was not part of draft coverage, which is a pretty wild year.
Well, I don't have to worry about this time.
Right.
There will not be a playoff game to worry about. There might be playoff games going on, but it will not be a Pelicans playoff game.
No. And that was the Lakers that they ended up losing.
Yeah. But all right, let's wrap this up. Who dat? Go Saints. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Subscribe. Easy, y'all.
Later, folks.